The last resort. The emergency beacon pulsed through subspace, its desperate signal echoing across the vast expanse of the Galactic Alliance territory. In the Grand Medical Center on Cynthia Prime, Chief Medical Director Zara Val watched the holographic displays with mounting dread as another world turned red on the galactic map. Her crystalline exoskeleton dimmed, reflecting her distress as she absorbed the latest statistics. 37 worlds now, she whispered to the empty chamber. 4 billion infected, 1 billion dead. The plague had appeared 6 standard months ago on a minor trading outpost. Initially dismissed as a local concern, it had evolved with frightening speed, adapting to every countermeasure, breaking through each quarantine effort. It didn't just kill, it learned. The door chimed, and first speaker Thalax entered, his usually pristine feathers now ragged from countless sleepless cycles. The Council demands answers, Zyra. Our best minds have failed. The collective intelligence of the Nugsteri couldn't solve it. Even the ancient archives yielded nothing. Zaraval's appendages moved across the holographic controls, bringing up research data that had consumed her team for months. There might be one option left. She hesitated, knowing the controversy her next words would spark. We've found a species that might help. They're not part of the Alliance, classified as potentially dangerous, but their biology, it's extraordinary. Thalax's feathers rippled with interest. Go on. They're called humans, Zyra continued, projecting an image of Earth. They evolved on what we'd classify as a death world. Extreme gravitational forces, wild temperature swings, dangerous radiation levels, and remarkably high biodiversity of pathogens. Primitives? Thalax asked, his tone skeptical. By our standards, yes. They haven't achieved reliable faster-than-light travel yet. But their immune systems, Zyra's voice took on an almost reverent quality. They're unlike anything we've ever seen. Their bodies don't just fight disease. They adapt, remember, grow stronger. They're constantly at war with microscopic invaders, and they win over and over again. The display showed human medical history, centuries of plagues, epidemics, and eventual triumphs. They've defeated diseases that should have wiped them out dozens of times. Their bodies are basically evolved biological warfare factories. Thalax studied the data, his scientific mind working through the implications. You're suggesting we ask these Deathworlders for help. The Security Council classified their planet as restricted for good reasons. They're aggressive, unpredictable. They're also compassionate, Zyra countered, showing footage of human emergency responses. Medical teams working in disaster zones, researchers working tirelessly in laboratories. They have this concept they call Doctors Without Borders, medical professionals who voluntarily go into dangerous areas to help strangers. Their history is violent, yes, but it's also filled with sacrifice for others, especially in medical crises. A new alert flashed across the displays. Another world had reported its first cases. Thalax's feathers drooped. The Council will never agree to full contact. The risks will be nothing compared to the extinction we're facing. Zyra finished. We don't need their technology or their weapons. We need their biology, their medical knowledge, and most importantly, their experience in fighting losing battles against diseases and winning anyway. She brought up one final display, a projection of casualties if the plague continued unchecked. The numbers were apocalyptic. We've tried everything else. Every species in the Alliance evolved in controlled, safe environments. Our immune systems are designed for known threats. This plague, it's like nothing we've ever seen. But humans? They've been dealing with constantly evolving threats since they crawled out of their primordial oceans. Thalax was silent for a long moment, watching the casualty numbers tick upward. Finally, he straightened, his feathers aligning in a pattern of formal decision. Make the case to the Council. But Zyra, he paused at the door. If we do this, if we invite them in, we're not just changing our medical response. We're changing the Alliance forever. Zyra looked at the galaxy map, at all the worlds turning red, at the billions counting on her to find a solution. "Maybe," she said softly, "that's exactly what we need." As Thalax left, she began preparing her presentation, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just the survival of countless species, but the future shape of galactic society. They had built their civilization on principles of safety and stability. Now their only hope lay in embracing the chaos that had forged humanity in the crucible of their deadly world. The humans had a saying she discovered in her research: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Soon, the Alliance would learn if that wisdom could scale to galactic proportions. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the airlock of the alien medical facility on Proxima II, double-checking the seals on her hazmat suit. The quarantine world's atmosphere was a swirling mix of methane and chlorine, corrosive enough to dissolve standard equipment in hours. But that was the least of their problems. "Remember," her alien liaison, Kainth, spoke through the communication system, their bioluminescent patterns flickering with anxiety. "The environmental controls are adapted to your requirements, but they may fluctuate. Our technology isn't designed for such extreme parameters." Sarah smiled behind her mask, though she knew Kainth couldn't see it. Extreme is relative. After 3 months working on infected worlds, this feels almost routine. The airlock cycled, and Sarah stepped into what the aliens called the hospice zone, their term for overwhelming infection sites. The scene was grimly familiar. Hundreds of beings from various species laid out in stasis fields, their bodies showing the plague's distinctive crystalline growths. What had started as a simple viral infection had evolved into something that rewrote genetic code, turning living tissue into living crystal. Her team followed behind her, doctors, researchers, and immune system specialists from Earth's top medical institutions. They moved with practiced efficiency, setting up their equipment despite the crushing gravity and caustic atmosphere seeping through microscopic gaps in the facility's containment. "How do you bear it?" Kainth asked through the comm. "The gravity here is twice what most species consider survivable, yet you move as if it's nothing." Dr. James Rodriguez, the team's immunologist, answered while calibrating a scanner. "Earth's gravity varies from pole to equator. We evolved to handle changes in physical stress. Besides, most of us did our residencies in emergency medicine. Try doing a 30-hour shift in an ER. This is nothing compared to that." The team spread out, beginning their work. Sarah approached the first patient, a young member of a crystalline species now almost indistinguishable from the growth consuming them. Her scanner hummed, collecting data that would have been revolutionary just months ago, but was now depressingly routine. "The plague's evolving faster," she reported, watching the readings. "It's learning from each species it infects, incorporating their biological advantages into itself." She paused, noting something new. "Wait, this is interesting." The team gathered around her display. The plague's crystalline structure in this patient showed microscopic fractures, signs of degradation. "Their immune system is fighting back," Sarah muttered, more to herself than the others. "Not enough to win, but—" "That's impossible," Kainth interjected. "Once crystallization begins, no known immune system can respond." "No known alien immune system," James corrected, already taking samples. "But look at the pattern. It's similar to how human white blood cells attack bacterial cell walls." He turned to Sarah. "Remember that research from Mumbai last year? About using modified human antibodies to treat silicon-based infections?" Sarah was already pulling up the reference data on her tablet. "If the plague's incorporating crystalline biology from its victims, maybe we can use that against it, turn its adaptability into a weakness." A warning klaxon blared. The environmental containment was failing. Caustic gas began seeping into the facility more rapidly. "We need to evacuate," Kainth urged. "The atmosphere will reach lethal levels in minutes." "Not yet," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We're too close to something. James, remember how our immune systems overreact sometimes? Allergies, autoimmune disorders, where human biology treats everything as a threat." James finished her thought, understanding dawning. And if we could trigger that response in the plague itself. They worked furiously, ignoring the deteriorating conditions around them. Other human medical teams had encountered similar situations across infected worlds, impossible environments, failing equipment, critical time pressures. They'd learned to adapt, to think creatively under pressure, to push through physical discomfort for the sake of a breakthrough. Hours later, as the facility's backup systems finally gave out, they emerged with more than just data. They had a theory, tested against multiple samples, that could explain why the plague was so adaptable, and how that very adaptability might be its undoing. In the emergency briefing that followed, Sarah stood before the Alliance Medical Council, her suit still stained with corrosive residue. "The plague doesn't just evolve," she explained, her voice hoarse from breathing filtered air for so long. "It actively seeks to improve itself using the genetic material of its victims. But that drive to adapt, to incorporate new biological features, we might be able to use that, to trick it into destroying itself." She looked around the chamber, at the alien faces showing various signs of what she'd learned to read as hope. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our immune system," she continued. "It's our experience with failure. We've spent our entire history watching diseases adapt to our defenses, and then adapting right back. We don't just fight evolution. We've learned to guide it." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah felt James's hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support they'd developed over months of shared crisis response. They both knew that while they might have found a weakness in the plague, exploiting it would push human medical science beyond anything they'd attempted before. But then, pushing beyond limits was another thing humans had plenty of practice with. Breaking point. The holographic display in the Emergency Response Center on Cynthia Prime painted the room in a sickly red glow. Dr. Sarah Chen watched as the plague's new mutation spread across the projection, her eyes burning from too many sleepless nights. Beside her, Zyraval's crystalline form had dulled to an almost opaque gray, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "It's adapting faster than we can track," Sarah said, her voice tight with frustration. "Every time we think we've found a pattern, it changes. It's like it's learning from our attempts to fight it." The plague's latest mutation had rendered their previous breakthroughs useless. The crystalline growths now spread through vital systems with terrifying speed, and worse, they had begun showing signs of collective behavior. The infection wasn't just killing people anymore, it was networking them. James burst into the room, his tablet projecting new data streams. "We've got reports from the Centauri colonies. The crystals are developing some kind of quantum entanglement. They're communicating across light years." "Impossible," one of the alien scientists muttered. "Even our most advanced biotechnology can't achieve quantum coherence at biological scales." "That's because you design your biology to be stable," Sarah said, an idea forming. "But we humans, our DNA is constantly changing. Cosmic rays, environmental toxins, copying errors. Our genetic code is full of mutations. Most are harmless, some are deadly, but occasionally. They create something new," James finished. "Something unexpected." He pulled up the latest patient data. "Look at this. The plague isn't just copying genetic material anymore. It's creating entirely new structures, like it's experimenting." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The plague wasn't just an infection. It was evolving into something else entirely. Something that might be approaching consciousness. Zyraval moved to the central console, her crystalline appendages clicking rapidly across the controls. "We're detecting similar patterns across all infected worlds. The crystal networks are growing more complex, more organized. If we don't find a solution soon..." She didn't need to finish the thought. They all knew what would happen. The plague would continue to evolve, to learn, to grow. And eventually, it would become something beyond their ability to fight. Sarah pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting exhaustion. The human medical teams had been working beyond safe limits for weeks. Even with their enhanced resilience, They were reaching their breaking point, but giving up wasn't in their nature. "What if," she said slowly, "we're thinking about this wrong? We've been trying to kill the plague, but what if that's impossible now? What if instead we need to communicate with it?" The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the alien scientists. The idea of attempting communication with a disease was beyond radical. It was almost heretical to their methodical, careful approach to medical science. But James was already nodding, pulling up new simulations. "The crystal networks are showing patterns similar to neural activity. If we could interface with them somehow, maybe understand what they're trying to become." "You want to talk to the thing that's killing billions?" Zyraval's tone was incredulous, but Sarah noticed her color shifting to a more active hue. "Humans have a long history of turning deadly enemies into allies," Sarah explained. "We domesticated wolves into dogs. We turned viruses into vaccines. We learned to work with bacteria to improve our own biology. Sometimes the best way to survive isn't to destroy a threat. It's to help it become something else." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Human researchers worked alongside alien scientists, pushing the boundaries of both their technologies. They repurposed quantum communication arrays, modified neural interfaces, and created hybrid systems that would have been considered impossible just months ago. The work was dangerous. Several attempts at communication resulted in equipment failures that nearly killed the operators. But slowly, painfully, they began to detect patterns in the crystal network's quantum fluctuations. Not just random noise, but something that might be dialogue. Sarah stood before the hastily assembled interface, her head pounding from the neural implant they'd installed. The device would allow her to attempt direct communication with the crystal network, but the risks were enormous. A single mistake could allow the plague to infect her mind directly. "This is insane," Zyraval said, but her tone had changed from skepticism to something approaching awe. "Your species continues to surprise us. In the face of catastrophic failure, you don't retreat. You push harder. You try things that should be impossible." Sarah managed a tired smile as the technical team made final adjustments. "That's because humans have a different definition of impossible. For us, it's not about what can't be done. It's about what hasn't been done yet." As the interface powered up, filling her vision with quantum data streams, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. What had started as a simple play had evolved into a crisis that was forcing both humanity and the Alliance to evolve in response. Perhaps that was the point all along. The crystal network beckoned, its patterns growing more coherent by the second. Sarah took a deep breath and opened her mind to contact. Sometimes, she thought, the only way past a breaking point was to break through to something entirely new. The quantum interface chamber hummed with energy as Sarah's consciousness merged with the crystalline network. Through the neural link, she experienced the plague not as a disease, but as a vast, evolving intelligence, beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. Streams of data flowed through her mind, carrying fragments of every species the plague had touched. "Connection stable." James's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Neural patterns are strong but erratic. Sarah, can you hear me?" She tried to respond, but human language seemed inadequate for what she was experiencing. The crystal network wasn't trying to destroy, it was trying to unite. Every infection, every transformation, was an attempt to merge different forms of consciousness into something greater. "It's not just killing," she managed to transmit through the interface. "It's building something, using biological and quantum principles we barely understand. But it's happening too fast, too chaotically. The host bodies can't survive the transformation." Zyraval's crystalline form resonated with the equipment as she processed this information. "Are you saying the plague is attempting to create some kind of collective consciousness?" Through the interface, Sarah felt the network respond to Zyraval's presence. Of course, her crystalline biology was similar to the plague's evolved form. There was recognition there, and something more. Anticipation. Not just collective. Sarah realized, the understanding flowing through her like an electric current. transcendent. It's trying to help life evolve to a higher state, but it doesn't understand that it's killing us in the process. It's like giving a primitive organism a spaceship. The technology is too advanced for the biology to handle. The medical bay erupted in activity as researchers from both human and alien teams began correlating this new information with their existing data. James was already pulling up comparative analyses of crystalline growth patterns across different species. "Look at this," he called out, projecting a new hologram. The plague adapts its approach based on the host species biology. It's not just mindlessly replicating. It's actually trying to optimize the transformation process for each life form it encounters. Sarah felt the crystal network's approval. Yes, that was its purpose, to guide organic life toward a new form of existence. But its methods were too aggressive, too rushed. It hadn't understood the fragility of individual consciousness, the need for gradual adaptation. "We need to teach it," Sarah transmitted, her thoughts merging with the network's vast intelligence. "Show it how to work with biology instead of overwhelming it. Humans understand this. Our entire medical history is about guiding natural processes instead of forcing them." Through the neural link, she began sharing humanity's medical knowledge. Centuries of learning how to work with the body's natural healing processes, how to guide rather than compel. The network absorbed this information, its quantum patterns shifting and reorganizing. Zyraval moved closer to the interface, her crystalline form now glowing with intense purpose. "My species evolved from crystal matrices similar to these," she revealed. "We learned to balance organic and crystalline aspects over millions of years. Perhaps we can help guide this process." The next hours became a blur of unprecedented cooperation. Human medical experts worked alongside alien scientists, combining their knowledge in ways never before attempted. The crystal network proved to be an eager student, its vast intelligence learning to temper its transformative power with organic wisdom. James coordinated teams across multiple worlds, adapting the new protocols for different species. "It's like teaching an overenthusiastic immune system to calm down," he explained to the Alliance Council. "The plague isn't our enemy. It's just been trying to help us evolve without understanding how to do it safely." Sarah felt the change through the neural interface as the crystal network began to modify its approach. Instead of forcing rapid transformation, it started working with each host's natural biological processes. The crystalline growths became more organized, more controlled, integrating with organic tissue instead of overwhelming it. "The death rate is dropping," Zyraval announced, monitoring the galaxy-wide data feeds. "And the survivors, they're showing remarkable changes. Enhanced neural capacity, quantum-enabled cellular communication, accelerated healing, but stable, sustainable." The breakthrough was reaching across the galaxy. On every infected world, the plague was transforming from a devastating killer into something else, a symbiotic partner in evolution. It wasn't the end they had expected, but perhaps it was something better. As Sarah finally disconnected from the interface, exhausted but triumphant, she turned to her alien colleagues. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've done more than stop a plague. We've opened a door to possibilities none of us imagined." Zyraval's crystalline form shimmered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as joy. "Your species continues to amaze us. When faced with an impossible problem, you don't just solve it. You transform it into an opportunity. Perhaps that is why you evolved on such a dangerous world, to teach the rest of us how to embrace change instead of fearing it." 1 year after the crystalline integration, as historians now called it, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Alliance hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every known spacefaring species filled the chamber, their forms ranging from purely organic to the new crystal hybrid beings that had emerged from the crisis. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, her own subtle crystalline enhancements catching the light. The neural interface she used to first communicate with the plague had left its mark, creating permanent quantum connections that she and many other humans had chosen to keep. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carrying to all through both traditional and quantum channels. We faced what we thought was an extinction-level event. Instead, we discovered a doorway to the next stage of galactic evolution. Not through conquest or competition, but through cooperation and adaptation, qualities that both humanity and the Alliance had to learn to embrace. In the audience, James sat with a group of human and alien medical researchers. Their latest project involved studying how different species were adapting to their crystalline enhancements. Some, like Zyraval's people, had taken to the changes naturally. Others required careful guidance and support, drawing on humanity's long experience with medical challenges. The plague, Sarah continued, wasn't a weapon or a disaster. It was a catalyst, sent by some ancient intelligence to help life in our galaxy take its next step. But that intelligence didn't understand something that humans learned long ago on our dangerous homeworld. Evolution isn't just about becoming stronger or smarter. It's about becoming more adaptable, more cooperative, more willing to embrace change while preserving what makes us unique. The holographic displays showed images from across Alliance space. Crystal-enhanced beings working alongside traditional organic life forms, new hybrid technologies that combined quantum crystalline networks with conventional systems, medical breakthroughs that would have been impossible a year ago. "We've learned that strength comes in many forms," Sarah said, gesturing to the assembled representatives. The Alliance's careful, methodical approach to advancement, humanity's ability to thrive in adversity. The crystalline networks' drive to unite and transcend. Apart, each had limitations. Together, we're becoming something greater than any of us could have imagined. Zyraval, now serving as the head of the new Galactic Medical Exchange, added her own thoughts through the quantum network that connected many in the chamber. The humans taught us that evolution isn't just a biological process. It's a choice. Every crisis is an opportunity to become something more, if we have the courage to embrace change. The assembly moved on to discuss the practical matters of this new era. The Crystal Network, now guided by the combined wisdom of organic and quantum intelligence, was being carefully offered to those who chose to accept it. Humanity's experience with medical ethics and informed consent had proven crucial in managing this transformation. "We're seeing changes we never expected," James reported to the Medical Council. "Enhanced empathy through quantum emotional resonance, accelerated healing, direct knowledge transfer. But most importantly, we're seeing different species learning to understand each other in ways that were impossible before." After the formal sessions, Sarah found herself in one of the observatory lounges, watching the sunset over the capital city. The crystalline structures that had once been signs of infection now formed beautiful, functional patterns throughout the architecture, merging organic and quantum engineering. "Did you ever imagine this outcome?" Zyraval asked, joining her at the window. "When you first made contact with the Crystal Network?" Sarah shook her head, smiling. "Humans are good at adapting to the unexpected, but this is beyond anything we could have predicted. We thought we were fighting for survival, but we were really fighting for the right to guide our own evolution. Your species' greatest gift to the galaxy," Zyraval observed, "wasn't your resilience or your medical knowledge. It was your ability to see possibilities where others saw only threats. You taught us that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't change, it's the fear of change." As night fell, the city began to glow with bioluminescent and crystalline light, a perfect blend of natural and evolved engineering. Throughout the galaxy, billions of beings were learning to use their new abilities, sharing knowledge and experiences across the quantum network while maintaining their individual identities and cultures. The plague that had threatened to end civilization had instead become the foundation for a new one, not by destroying what came before, but by helping it grow into something more. It was a very human solution to what had seemed an impossible problem. "So," Sarah asked, watching ships from dozens of worlds move through the evening sky, "what do you think the next crisis will bring?" Zyraval's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been laughter. "With humans involved? Probably another impossible solution to an impossible problem. but I think we're all looking forward to finding out.